Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to another video. Today I am bringing you a kind of review, kind of reasoning. So I don't actually have anything scripted for this video, which was probably a bad idea. But I started a Kindle Unlimited series and I've decided to DNF it. And I wanted to come on and chat to you about the two books that I read, the two and a half, two and three thirds of a book that I read, and kind of give you reasons why I'm DNF in this series. So without further ado, I am talking about the Sick Boy series by Lucy Smoke. The first book is Pretty Savage, then we have Stone Cold Queen, and the third book is Natural Born Killers. There is another three books in the series. I am totally blanking on their titles. I will pop them on screen. I did not read these, so I will not be commenting on the latter half of the series. I will only be commenting on the books that I read. I'm gonna try and keep this as spoiler free as possible, and if I do speak about spoilers, I will warn you beforehand. The first book is Pretty Little Savage, and in this we follow Avalon, and she's had a pretty hard life. Like, she hasn't had it easy. Her mum is not a mum, essentially. She is a sex worker and an addict, and she's just not around for Avalon. And when she is around, it's not in a good way. So Avalon just has to grow up real quick, and she gets into trouble at school. She's been kicked out of multiple schools, and she gets an opportunity. The story kind of kicks off with her getting into an altercation with another student, and she goes to the headmaster of the school, and she's like, there's nothing more that we can do for you. We've done everything we can. Enter a mysterious lady who offers Avalon a full ride for 1 year to a prestigious university. Now, obviously this is dark romance and you have to suspend your disbeliefs for a lot of this, because I personally found it a hard pill to swallow that the life that Avalon had. I'm not saying that it couldn't be done, because there probably is people out there that have hard lives and still be able to keep their grades up. But Avalon is a character. It didn't make any sense to me, because Avalon as a character didn't seem like the type of character that would be able to keep her grades up. And she's been through multiple schools. She's got thrown out of a lot of schools because of her violence, and she doesn't really have a stable home life. So I just found it really hard to believe that she would have the grades to get into a university full ride. And that kind of like sets off the story, and your suspicions are on high, because you're like, the chance of this happening are low. So you're like, why is this university interested in Avalon specifically? And like that opens up a box of, questions. So Avalon goes to the university, and like the series title suggests, she is introduced to the Sick Boys. There is Dean, Abel, and Braxton, and they rule this university. They're kind of like mini mafia. Their fathers are multi-billionaires, and they have more money than sense. And no one says no to them. No one says no to the Sick Boys. And then little Avalon comes along, and she says no. Like, and they're all like, oh my god, Avalon. Like, it's one of those books where it's like she's the opposite of what they're used to. So that's where the attraction comes from. Now, I seen on Goodreads that this is marked as a reverse harem. And when I went into this, I was expecting a reverse harem. I don't know if there's been confusion, because there is another series called The Sick Boys or Sick Boys on Goodreads that is actually a reverse harem and is tagged as such. So maybe people are thinking that this series by Lucy Smoke is that series and that's why it has this tag. I just think that this tag is problematic because of what happens in the book. This is not a reverse harem, so if you're looking for that, this book, this series is not it. I read like 2 and 3/3 of the three books, the first three books, and there was never any inclination that it would ever go there. And I didn't like the fact that I was thinking it was going to be something and it completely wasn't. So I guess it was kind of just like a little bit of a letdown almost immediately. I did give the first one a chance, and I gave the first one a 2.75. And you might think, why did you continue if you're only given the first one a 2.75? And it's because I really liked the side characters. So there was this side character called Riley, who is from a very similar background to Avalon, and she is in the same room as Avalon. And she's a hacker. She keeps her head down. She minds her own business, but she also has a business on the side where she makes money. She's she's like a cool girl. Like she just gives cool girl vibes. And I really liked Riley, and I was hoping going from the first book, I knew that we were going to follow Avalon again because there's like a cliffhanger. It's not really a cliffhanger, but there's some unresolved things that need to be resolved. So we knew we were going to follow Avalon again in the second book. But I was hoping by the time we maybe rocked around to the third book, we would be able to follow more of the side characters instead of Avalon. But that wasn't the case. So Avalon is a character. The first book made sense. Avalon is a character, is angry, she doesn't like authority, she's very much do it her own way, don't like me, don't talk to me. She's one of those characters. And in the first book, I was down for it. In the first book, I was like, okay, this makes sense. Like, she's got her guard up, she's going to be this way because of what she has been through. And it totally made sense to have her character like this. But I just think that that's fine in a book. But when we move on to, the second book and the third book, I want more character development. You can't just give me an angry, violent character for 3 books straight. Like, I want some depth in my characters, and unfortunately, Avalon didn't have any. Like, considering what she's been through and considering the character she's built up to be, it would make sense that anger and violence is part of her, you know, like part of her coding as a character, but that was all she had. And I just didn't see another side to her. And, after about 700 pages, I got bored. I also got angry myself because I was like, Avalon, just stop. Like, just take a minute. Take a minute, girl. Take a minute. It just got annoying and like it made me agitated reading it because I was just like, oh, stop with this cycle, the same thing over and over again. So I did start disliking Avalon as the story went on. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking I might talk a little bit spoilers, but I'll leave that till the next section. I will chapter this video so you can watch the non-spoiler part and the spoiler part as you would like. But I'm just speaking about this and I'm like, I may need to go into spoilers for this one. So yeah, Avalon as a character wasn't really great. And then you add in the fact that her love interest is one of the sick boys. And I'm not going to take it as a spoiler telling you the name of the sick boy because you can tell, by the synopsis, by this kind of story, that she's going to go with one of them. And, well, unless you're me and read Reverse Harem and thought she was going to go with all of them. So I was a little bit miffed as I read this, but then it made sense when I went on to Goodreads and seen book 2 and 3 have not been tagged that way. Then I found the other series. So she ends up going with Dean. Now, Dean as a character was 2 dimensional. Like, I feel ambivalent towards Dean. Like, he didn't stress me out, he didn't annoy me. I didn't love him, I didn't hate him. He was just there. Like it was like Dean was Avalon's accessory. And even though the author tried to make him have some depth, it just fell flat. And I think this is why I enjoyed Brax and Abel so much because even though they weren't at the forefront, they still had a fairly decent character development from the sidelines. Same with Riley. And I think honestly that's why I gave this series the third, well, I tried the third book because I do know I read the synopsis of book four, and I do think that the side characters get more of main screen time later on in the series, but I just could not anymore with Avalon. I just couldn't. I couldn't force myself through that to get to the characters that I want, to potentially be disappointed in the story that the author tells about them. So I just decided to DNF. There is more reasons why I've DNF'd this, but I'm gonna have to go into spoilers to say why. I just think that overall, the plot of the first book was completely predictable, and if it wasn't a woman at the center of this book, then the plot wouldn't have happened this way. And there was so many routes that it could have took that would have still had the same effect. And I didn't really like the way that the story went, but I was interested enough to know why there was such interest in Avalon as a character. So I read the second book, and Avalon's anger and violence just started to irritate me. She'd done things to people that I don't personally think deserved it, and I'll get to that in a minute, don't you worry. That's spoilers, but I'll get to that in a minute. It was just meh. And then, so I gave the first one a 2.75. I gave the second one a 2. And then I realized that the fourth one follows one of the side characters. And I was like, I wonder if I could drag my ass through the third book to get to that one and maybe I'll have a better time. I got like 280 pages through the third book. I was almost finished it. And I was like, then don't want it anymore. I am sick. Like, it felt like the storyline was like repeating itself. So it felt like the first book had its own plot points and its own storyline, but it felt like book one, two, and three were like copy and paste essentially. You have these characters running about trying to find information, and then they find the information and someone gets tortured. Like, it was just a cycle that kept going, that got boring. It didn't feel like there was any surprises or any, interest in the plot for me personally. So I just decided to DNF. And that's okay because I gave it a go. It was free on my Kindle Unlimited subscription, so I didn't pay any money for it. Well, like girl math money, I didn't actually pay money on the spot for it. It was included in something that I use quite consistently. So I call it free, even though it's not free. But I tried. I tried and it didn't work out. And I'm sad about it because it potentially could have been a hit. I love a dark romance. Maybe if I didn't go in expecting a reverse harem, I maybe would have thought differently. But then, obviously, having read the next two books in the series, no, this just wasn't for me, and I'm sad that it wasn't because I picked this up as a mood read. It was on a whim, kind of fly by your seat choice, and it didn't work, and that's sad. I am going to go into spoilers here, so if you don't want to be spoiled for this series, then please make sure that you look at the chapters down below so you can skip to the parts that you want to watch that are spoiler free. Because I wasn't intending to go into spoilers, but I feel like there's a few things that annoyed me. So starting back off with the fact that this was targeted as a reverse harem, I was so confused because when I read the first one, the the plot twist at the end was that Avalon is essayed, and I hate calling it a plot point, and because it shouldn't be. And as I says, if this main character wasn't a woman, then this wouldn't have been the plot point. You could have had her being kidnapped. You could have had her beaten up. You could have had her like missing and on the run. Like, there was so many things that you could have done, but because this character, fell into the trope of, I hope I get my words right here because I don't want to like get it wrong, but her mum tried to sell her through her whole childhood to men, and you knew immediately that when she went back to her home, that this creepy guy that's been around her whole childhood caught her on her own, and you knew immediately what was going to happen. It fell into that because of her background, it was predictable for her future. And I hate to say that, but this is a character and this is a book and this is the instance that I'm talking about. But there could have been loads of things that happened here. It didn't have to be SA, and unfortunately it was. And I don't shy away from books that involve hard topics because I think psychology and the acts of violence and anger and stuff are so interesting. The human mind is amazing, so I don't shy away from hard topics, but I don't like SA being used as a plot point per se. Like, hold on. For example, My Dark Vanessa. This is a book about a teacher that grooms a student. This involves essay, but this is not a plot point. Like, it's not used to advance plot. It's not used to be there as a checkpoint. This is about a woman struggling to come to terms what happened with her when she was a child. It is about the abuse of power. It is deep and meaningful and sad and harrowing. This is what I'm talking about when I say don't like SA being used as a plot point with no gravity, because in something like this, it's full of gravity. It's the whole reason of this book. It is the healing journey of, someone who is just trying to come to terms with their past. Whereas Pretty Little Savage, it was just used to advance the plot. And I don't really like it doing that. I hope this is making sense. It makes sense in my head. So you kind of know what is going on. The sick boys know something about Avalon, but it's never specifically stated what they know throughout all of the books that I read. Out of the like 700 and something pages I read, it was never specifically stated what they knew about Avalon. And so that was really annoying because it felt like a plot hole. Like, it felt like a plot that was being dragged on, but it kind of felt like a plot hole. Like the author had forgotten that she says that the boys knew something from her file, and then just never mentioned it again. So, didn't really like that. Like, I got behind Avalon in the first book. I got behind her anger. I got behind her wanting to get free of her life and, using that energy and that emotion to get through. But it just continued so much. So, another thing that annoys me that happens in the second book but ties back to the first book is that the reason that Avalon goes home to her mum's is because she is with Dean and she goes to a party with her friend Carlina. I always say her name wrong and I'm forgetting if that's even right. We're gonna say Carlina. Carolina? We'll say Carolina, but I don't feel 100% certain that that's her name. So she goes to a party with her, and this is a Luke Kincaid party, which is like Dean's nemesis because their families have been fighting for the beginning of time, apparently. So she goes there, she bumps into Kincaid, they are talking. Dean's ex, Kate, snaps a picture of them and sends it to Dean. Now, Kate is being forced into like an engagement with Kincaid because her family's going to go broke and she still wants Dean back. So she snaps a picture, sends it to Dean, thinking that Dean will split up with Avalon and that'll be her way in. And so Avalon goes back. Her and Dean have a huge falling out because Dean sees the picture and is like, "Why are you with Kincaid?" And then Avalon runs back home to get away from Dean. You might be wondering why I'm telling you all this, and it's because then in the second book, Avalon attacks Kate, blaming Kate for her essay. This didn't sit well with me at all because this is where Avalon's violence and anger started to get annoying because she was blaming the wrong people, in my opinion. Because the thing is how is Kate responsible for you getting essayed? If you're gonna say that she's responsible for that, then you should be blaming Dean too. You should be blaming everyone that was around. You should be blaming Kincaid because he was in the picture. You should be blaming Dean because he had an argument with you and you ran home. Like, she's blaming Kate because Kate took the picture, that then made her and Dean fall out, which then made her go home, which then led her essay. And I was like, "Mm, I don't, I don't blame Kate. Kate would like Kate never knew what would happen. Like she didn't snap that picture knowing that the future events that would happen. So this is where my kind of dislike or annoyance to Avalon started coming in, because I was like, Kate is not to fault. Like Kate is not to fault here, and you're taking your anger and aggression out on kind of an innocent. Like, yeah, okay, Kate was a bit bitchy, and yeah, okay, she done it to like mess with Dean and Avalon, but she didn't do it with nefarious, traumatizing thoughts in mind. She didn't know what was going to happen, and I just thought it was very strange because she blamed Kate, but then she didn't blame Dean for not hearing her out after the picture was sent, and she didn't blame Kincaid for chatting to her and inviting her to a party, and she didn't blame Brax, whose car she stole. It just didn't make any sense to me, and I didn't like the. I'm okay with violence. I'm okay with anger. I'm okay with all emotions in a book, but when you're blaming the wrong people, like when you all you give me is anger and violence, and then you use that anger and violence against the wrong people, it just starts getting boring. And that's essentially what this book series started doing, is it just got really boring. I was so by the end of it, I was just like, do you know what? I need to DNF this. Because if I don't DNF this, it's going to put me in a slump. It's going to stay on my list for way too long. I'm never going to read the whole series. So I was like, I need to be honest with myself. And even though I started this with the best of intentions, tell myself that I'm never going to read the rest of the series, because I just couldn't anymore with these characters. Didn't like Avalon after the third book. Dean was a 2D character at best. Like, I just, like, Dean as a love interest was so boring. Like, the author tried to make him like that cool alpha male, and it just came across as, I, Avalon, do what you're told, Avalon. And I was like, oh, please stop. Please stop. If you're gonna give me bossy Dom vibes from a male love interest, then at least make it believable. Like Dean had nothing. Dean had nothing I wanted. So I think that was the part of the reason why continuing with this series just wasn't gonna work, because I wasn't invested in the romance. The main character got annoying. The plot just seemed to constantly recycle itself. So apart from the first one, in the first one you're getting introduced to the characters, you're getting introduced to the setting, you know you're kind of getting a feel for the characters as Avalon moves into the university. So you're kind of in this space getting to know things, and the plot was very much like a separate plot. But book two and three, it was literally just boring, because it was like they would find out information, and then they would try and find the person, and then it would go wrong. Something would happen to Avalon. The sick boys would come to her rescue. She would then fight her way out and look like a badass. And then the boys would fall in love with her. And then they would get information, and then someone would get tortured. It just went on a cycle of nope. And I was like, okay, I'm just done with this. I'm just done. And unfortunately, I am sad about this, because I picked this up as a mood read. I picked this up on a whim, and I was really excited about it, but it just fell flat. It just fell complete flat, and I can't continue on in a series that does this. So I hope this video is enjoyable for you to watch. I didn't script this, and this was kind of just a spur of the moment idea, because I just decided to DNF them, and I wanted to talk about it. And what better people to talk about it than with the lovely people of the internet? So I just thought that this would be a really good idea to get these kind of feelings off my chest, um, as I have just decided to DNF. And I would say that if you are planning to pick these up, please look up trigger warnings. If you have not watched my spoiler part of this video, please look up like trigger warnings, and go into this expecting less. I don't know how to like not like I don't want to say don't read these books, because even though I would not recommend these books, and even though I'm DNF in the series, this could be someone's favorite book, and it does have, fairly decent like average star ratings. So it seems like a shame for me to be like, don't read these books. I personally tell you not to read these books, but if you do end up picking up these books, I would love to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments if you've read them. Let me know in the comments if you want to read them. And if you have read them, let me know what you thought of them. But if you're going to talk about spoilers, please mark your comment. Like, please put like spoilers and big, like, scream spoilers at us. Um, or if you want to, my Instagram is always linked down below. You can message me over there and let me know your thoughts on these books. Don't pick these up on my recommendation because I'm not recommending them. I just get really awkward when I have poor things to say about a book, I think, because I like, I enjoy, the main thing I enjoy is recommending books and sharing my love of books with people. But then I have occurrences like this where I try something and it doesn't work. And that's said for all of us, I think. Everyone has that every now and again. So yeah, this was my first DNF of 2024. So Natural Born Killers was my first DNF. And this is my first series DNF of the year also. I honestly would feel bad, but I don't, because this just didn't do it for me. And one of my goals this year was to be more realistic DNF books that I am not vibing with for the sake of enjoying reading. I read to enjoy it, and if I'm not enjoying it, then I shouldn't be finishing it. So this kind of has been like, it was a mood read. This was a of the moment kind of video after I decided to DNF the whole series, and it's helped one of my goals as well for the year. So this has kind of worked out perfectly. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to subscribe and hit the bell, and let me know what you all are reading in the comments. Thank you so very much for watching, and remember to stay safe, happy, and healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Pick it up from the top, hit restart. So